That was it. That was the last straw. I had been patient, I had played by the rules, but now she was playing dirty. She wasn't just stealing my invention, she was trying to profit off of it in ways that were illegal. And that's when I decided it was time to take the gloves off. I contacted my lawyer again and said, "We're not just suing for damages anymore. We're going for everything. We're going after her for everything she's worth." We filed a new set of charges: fraud, intellectual property theft, conspiracy to sell stolen goods. The stakes had just been raised, and now I wasn't just looking for justice. I was looking for a way to make sure Emily would never be able to take advantage of someone again. The legal battle escalated quickly after that. The courts were now looking at the full scope of what she had done, and it wasn't pretty. Emily had underestimated me at every turn, and now she was facing the consequences. Then came the settlement offer. Her lawyers reached out, offering a substantial sum to settle the case outside of court. They knew it was over. They knew they couldn't win, but I wasn't interested in money anymore. I didn't want her dirty cash. What I wanted was to make sure that when this was over, she would never again think she could get away with something like this. I responded with my own offer. She had 48 hours to publicly admit her wrongdoings, pay me a substantial sum, and leave the tech industry behind. If she refused, we would go to trial, and I would expose everything in court, where the entire world would see what she had done. Her response was immediate. She backed down. She agreed to everything: a public apology, the financial settlement, and she agreed to stay out of the industry indefinitely. It was a victory, but not one I savored. What I had fought for wasn't money, it was principle. It was the truth, and in the end, the truth won. The final settlement wasn't what I thought it would be. I had prepared myself for a battle that might end in public exposure and loss, but instead, Emily caved. Her sudden submission felt almost anticlimactic. I expected a sense of triumph, a sense of justice being served. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. Sure, I had won. She publicly admitted her wrongs, and she agreed to step away from the industry that she had tried to tarnish with her theft. I had my invention back, my name cleared, and a significant financial settlement that would help me push forward. But it wasn't just about that. What I wanted most wasn't the money or the victory. It was the principle of standing up for what was mine. What I wanted was to show the world that you can't just take something from someone else and get away with it. But there was something else, something I hadn't anticipated: the feeling of closure. After all the rage, the planning, the sleepless nights, and the fights in court, it was over. The victory wasn't as sweet as I thought it would be, but it was necessary. I needed to know that I wasn't just someone who had been taken advantage of. I needed to know that I could stand my ground, protect what was mine, and keep moving forward. I looked back at the process, the betrayal, the rage, the moments when I thought about giving up. Emily had taken my idea, my trust, my work, and turned it into something she thought was hers. But in the end, she underestimated me. She thought I was just some quiet guy with a dream, too passive to fight back. She didn't see the strength I had, the drive, the refusal to let someone walk all over me. In the aftermath, I focused on my next steps. The legal battle had put a halt to everything for a while, but now I had the green light to move forward. The invention I had worked so hard on was finally mine to launch. My version, my improvements, my vision. And this time I made sure I was protecting it from every angle. The patent was airtight, the business plan solid, and I had the backing I needed to take this to the next level. The tech world was buzzing with my announcement. Investors reached out, companies began to show interest, and I knew this time I was ready. I wasn't the same person who had started this journey, the same person who had trusted someone like Emily. I had learned from my mistakes, from the betrayal, and now I was in control of my future. The money? It didn't matter. Sure, the settlement helped, but I had already moved past that. What mattered was the belief in myself. What mattered was knowing that I had the skill, the drive, and the resilience to create something better, something stronger than ever before. As I stood in my office looking at the blueprint for the next phase of my company, I couldn't help but smile. I had done it. Despite the pain, the betrayal, the fight, I had done it. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I could never be taken down by someone like Emily again. I wasn't just survivor of a theft. I was a creator. And this time, nothing was going to stop me from making my mark on the world. As the firm began to grow, so did the pressure. I wasn't just running a small operation anymore. We were becoming a force in the industry, and with that growth came new challenges. Bigger clients, bigger stakes, and even bigger expectations. But despite the hurdles, I felt a surge of excitement. We were on the right path, and I was more determined than ever to show that starting my own firm was the best decision I'd ever made. But even as our business began to flourish, I couldn't ignore the fact that Craig's firm, the one I had once worked for, the one that had rejected me, was still out there, trying to keep up with the market. And as much as I tried to push it aside, I knew I had one last thing to prove. I had to crush his numbers. I had to show him that I wasn't just capable of doing what he said I couldn't. I was doing it on a scale that dwarfed anything his company could achieve. I spent sleepless nights tracking industry reports, comparing metrics, analyzing his firm's performance. I wanted to know how far ahead we were, and how much further we had to go. My team was on fire. We were landing new clients left and right, securing contracts that Craig's firm could only dream of. But I wasn't satisfied with just being a competitor. I wanted to dominate. I started pushing my team harder, demanding more from each of us. We weren't just chasing the success of the past year. We were building something that would last, something that would leave a lasting mark on the industry. But more than that, I needed results. Our next big contract was the one I had been eyeing for months, the kind of high-profile deal that would solidify our reputation and show the world that we weren't just another marketing agency. We were the agency, and as the weeks passed, it became clear we were winning. Our client acquisition rate was skyrocketing, our revenue was shattering projections, and our brand was starting to generate real buzz. Craig, on the other hand, was struggling to keep his clients happy. His numbers weren't matching up to ours. His firm was slowly beginning to slip in the rankings, while we were gaining ground at an alarming rate. But then came the final test. Craig reached out, surprisingly, through a personal message. He wanted to catch up. He said he had been hearing about my success and wanted to know how I was doing. At first, I wondered if it was genuine, if he actually wanted to congratulate me. But deep down, I knew better. He wanted to know what I was doing that he wasn't. We met at a cafe downtown, a neutral spot. When I walked in, I saw him sitting there, looking like he hadn't aged a day. He smiled as I approached, that same old smug grin I'd remembered from my days working under him. "Daniel, good to see you, man," Craig said, standing up to shake my hand. But there was something cold behind his eyes. I knew what was coming. "See, you're doing pretty well with the firm," he said, taking his seat again. "Congrats, when I said you weren't executive material, I didn't mean it personally. I just thought you needed more time to grow into it." I sat down across from him, a little amused. "Is that right? Well, I guess I found a way to grow on my own, didn't I?" He nodded slowly, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. "Yeah, I guess you did. But you've got to admit it's not easy to build something from scratch. You've got to work with the right people, have the right connections. It takes time. And you'll need to keep that momentum going, or it's all going to come crashing down." I could hear the jealousy in his voice, even though he tried to mask it. Craig wasn't giving me a compliment. He was testing me, trying to figure out how I had pulled it off. I leaned forward, looking him square in the eyes. "Craig, let me make something clear. It wasn't just about having the right people or connections. It was about having the vision, the drive, and the willingness to do what you wouldn't. I didn't sit around waiting for someone to give me a chance. I went out and created one." His expression faltered for a second. He wasn't used to being challenged like this, not by someone he once thought of as a subordinate. "So, what now?" Craig asked, trying to regain his composure. You're just going to keep doing your thing and think you can keep winning? I didn't even hesitate. You bet I am. And when the dust settles, Craig, you'll see exactly where I've taken this. I'm not just here to compete, I'm here to crush the numbers. The room went quiet for a moment. There was no more polite small talk. I had said what needed to be said. Craig understood that I wasn't some kid looking for a pat on the back anymore. I was a competitor, and more importantly, I was winning. I stood up to leave, leaving him sitting there staring at the table. The final words of our conversation hung in the air. I'm not here to just take part, I'm here to own it. As I walked out, I felt a rush of satisfaction. I had already surpassed his expectations, and when the numbers came in, when we officially crushed his company's figures, I would know that I had built something that not only proved my worth, it proved I was more than what he ever thought I could be. It didn't take long for the numbers to start showing. What started as a small, humble marketing firm was quickly turning into a powerhouse. Month after month, our growth exploded. We were signing new clients, landing deals that I'd once only dreamed of. The financials were up, and the trajectory was undeniable. And just as I had promised, we were leaving Craig's firm in the dust. I couldn't help but think back to that day when Craig told me I wasn't executive material. I thought about those words constantly, but now they didn't sting. They motivated me. I'd been told no one would take me seriously. I had been told I lacked the necessary vision. Yet here I was, proving everyone wrong and building something that would be remembered. The team I had assembled was in full swing. I wasn't just running the company, I was shaping it. I spent long days working on strategy, long nights reviewing contracts and marketing proposals. My team was hungry, and so was I. Every new success fueled us to go further, to push harder. The best part? The more success we had, the more the industry took notice. Our numbers were starting to stand out. We weren't just another agency anymore. We were the agency people were talking about. Our innovative approach to digital marketing, our ability to adapt and move quickly, was making waves. But as the firm continued to grow, the competition grew fiercer. Craig wasn't the only one who had noticed our success. Bigger players in the industry, those who had once been untouchable, began taking aim at us. I expected that. In this game, once you get ahead, you become a target. But the difference now was that I had the firepower to defend my turf. I knew Craig had his eyes on us, and I had heard rumors that he was trying to undercut us, taking on some of our clients with promises of more established strategies. But here's the thing, I wasn't worried. Our numbers spoke for themselves. The results we delivered were undeniable, and there was no way his old-school tactics could keep up with the innovation we were bringing to the table. One afternoon, I got a call that would mark the next turning point in my journey. It was from one of our biggest competitors, the biggest competitor in the industry. They had heard about our recent success and they wanted to talk. The opportunity? A potential merger. At first, I was skeptical. Merging meant compromising, sharing control. It meant letting someone else have a hand in our future. But as I listened to the offer, I couldn't help but realize something. This was our moment. It wasn't about merging. It was about proving. We were powerful enough to dictate our own terms. We didn't need anyone else's approval. We were already ahead. I rejected the offer. We were going to do this our way. And we were going to keep growing. We didn't need anyone telling us what we were worth. I spent the next few weeks reasserting our dominance in the market, meeting with our clients, refining our strategies, and building even more powerful partnerships. Every decision we made, every risk we took was geared toward one thing, making sure that we stayed on top. We were no longer just fighting for success, we were fighting for legacy. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I knew would give me the ultimate satisfaction. When we hit the numbers that Craig's firm could only dream of. I didn't need to see his face to rub it in his face personally. But I could feel it. I knew he was watching. I had surpassed his numbers, and in the process, I had outgrown the need for validation. I wasn't just a competitor anymore. I was a force. That evening, as I sat at my desk reviewing our latest figures, numbers that surpassed anything Craig's firm had done in the last year, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. It wasn't just about the victory over Craig. It was about everything I had achieved on my own. From the doubt, the dismissal, the rejection of my potential to the point where I was sitting here, running my own firm and dominating the industry. Craig had said I wasn't executive material. And now my numbers, my success, my reputation, everything I had built, spoke louder than any words ever could. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Craig had tried to define my limits, but in the end, it was my own vision, my drive, and my ambition that had rewritten my story. And no one, not Craig, not anyone, could take that from me. It wasn't long after we surpassed Craig's firm that the industry really started to take notice. We had broken through the noise, and now we were leading the conversation. Our numbers were growing exponentially, and the confidence that had once been missing in my team was now something we carried with pride. But as much as I reveled in our success, I knew this wasn't just about the numbers. It was about more than that. It was about proving that the journey I had taken, the path I had carved, was the right one. That's when I realized this wasn't just about making it in the business world. It was about owning the narrative of my own life. I had been told I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't executive material, that I lacked the vision. But here I was, sitting at the head of a thriving business that had outperformed everything I had ever imagined. It didn't feel like I had just beaten Craig. It wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about something deeper. I had become the person I always knew I could be. But victory didn't just come in the form of financial numbers or corporate accolades. It came in the form of independence. The realization that I had done this on my own, without relying on anyone else's approval, without waiting for someone to give me the chance I deserved. This was my empire. I had built it from the ground up, and no one could take that away. One afternoon, I got an unexpected message from Craig. It had been months since we last spoke, and I had assumed he had quietly accepted the defeat. But this message, it wasn't a congratulatory note. It wasn't a simple, "Hey, let's talk business" request. No, this one cut through everything. He was offering me a position at his company. "I've been watching your firm's success. Daniel," the message began, "I was wrong about you. I see now what you're capable of. If you ever want to come back, let me know. I have a role for you as an executive. The position is yours if you want it." I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was to laugh, to dismiss the offer immediately. But the truth was, the message hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't because I was considering the offer. It was because Craig was finally acknowledging what I had always known. I had done it. I had achieved something he never thought I could. I had built something bigger than him, and he knew it. But then I realized something even more powerful. I didn't need him anymore. I had created the life I wanted. I was living on my own terms, not under the shadow of someone who had once rejected me. The offer wasn't an invitation to fix anything. It was an acknowledgement of the truth I had fought so hard to prove, that I was more than what they said I was. So I didn't respond. To Craig, I didn't need to. I had already won. And now I was finally ready to take my firm to the next level. I wasn't about to waste another minute thinking about the man who had once doubted me. I was focused on what I had built and what I would continue to build. My future was no longer tied to someone else's vision of what I could be, and that's when I made the decision to take my business international. My success wasn't just about competing locally. It was about showing the world what I could do. It was time to expand. Time to prove that the success we had in the United States could be replicated elsewhere. The growth was almost overwhelming. New clients, international contracts, high-profile partnerships. My firm was suddenly on the radar of global players. And every day I woke up knowing that we were just getting started. But the most important thing, the thing that I took the most pride in, the fact that I had done it. I had done what Craig said I couldn't. I had become executive material. I had created something from nothing, built a company that not only surpassed expectations, but one that was now a force to be reckoned with. And in the end, it wasn't just about the business, it was about the journey. The pain of rejection, the struggle of building something from scratch. The satisfaction of knowing that every decision, every late night, every risk had been worth it. I had taken control of my own destiny. And now, as I sat back and watched my firm thrive, I realized something that made all of it worth it. I didn't need anyone's approval but my own. As the months passed, I watched my firm grow in ways I had only dreamed of. Expansion into international markets, new partnerships with high-profile clients, and an ever-growing team of talented individuals who shared my vision. It was happening. But as we rose, so did the expectations. The pressure didn't let up. In fact, it only increased. The challenges became greater, but with each hurdle I felt more equipped, more confident in my ability to lead. But there was one thing I hadn't anticipated: the weight of responsibility. With success came a new set of challenges, a new level of complexity in managing a growing empire. The decisions I made no longer only affected my immediate team. They affected the livelihoods of hundreds of people, clients from across the globe, and even the future of the business itself. There were times when I stayed up late, staring at projections and numbers, wondering if we could sustain this pace. But every doubt was met with the reminder of where I started, where I came from. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every rejection had led me to this point. And that's when I realized something crucial. I wasn't just building a company, I was building a legacy of resilience, vision, and success. The day I received the email from the industry magazine was a turning point. They wanted to feature my firm as one of the fastest-growing startups in the industry. To be recognized for our achievements felt surreal, but more than that, it was a moment where I realized how far we had come, not just in terms of numbers, but in terms of the impact we had made. We were no longer just competitors, we were leaders. That recognition didn't just change how the world saw us, it changed how I saw us. This wasn't just about crushing Craig's numbers anymore. It was about shaping the future of the industry, pushing boundaries, and creating opportunities for others. I realized that my success was not just a personal victory, it was a testament to the power of hard work, perseverance, and a refusal to be defined by the limitations others placed on me. I scheduled a meeting with my team to share the news of the feature. They had worked just as hard as I had, and this moment wasn't just for me. It was for all of us. As I stood in front of them, watching their faces light up with pride, I understood what true leadership was. It wasn't about the accolades. It wasn't about proving the doubters wrong anymore. It was about creating a team that believed in themselves and each other. It was about building a culture where everyone could thrive and be part of something bigger than just a paycheck. Today, I said, looking around at the people who had stood by me from the start, is not just a win for me. It's a win for all of us. We've made something that's changing the game, and we're just getting started. The applause that followed was loud, but more important than the noise was the feeling of unity, the sense of shared purpose that had brought us together. It wasn't just about the success of the firm. It was about building something that would last, something that could inspire others. And then, later that evening, as I sat at my desk, looking at the latest numbers, reflecting on everything we had accomplished, I thought about Craig. I thought about how far he had fallen, how his firm had struggled to keep up, while I had created something that had surpassed even my wildest expectations. I could have gone back to him, taken his offer. I could have let that be my story, the story of someone who had always worked for someone else. But that wasn't my story. And it wasn't the one I wanted to tell. Craig had tried to define me, told me I wasn't enough. But I had rewritten. That narrative built something far bigger than he could have ever imagined. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a call I had been waiting for. The kind of call that marked a turning point in the business world. One of the biggest international brands in the industry wanted to partner with us. It was everything we had worked for, everything we had dreamed of. But more than that, it was the validation of everything I had fought for. It wasn't just about the numbers anymore. It was about making a lasting impact on an industry, on the world. I stood up, looking out of the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. I realized then that I had not only created a business, I had created a legacy, one built on hard work, belief in myself, and the refusal to let anyone define my potential. It wasn't just about crushing Craig's numbers or proving I could do it. It was about shaping the future. And as I looked out at the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.